My granddaughter didn't want to introduce me to her fiancé. She said I shouldn't go to the wedding. She'd forgotten who paid for the $255,000 wedding. I showed up unannounced and saw what she was hiding. When I saw his face, my heart nearly stopped. It was, "My name is Walter Grant. I am 71, a widower, a carpenter who did well enough to retire early and spoil exactly two people without apology, my daughter and her daughter Lily." I wrote the first checks for that banquet hall, the string quartet, the ridiculous fog machine Lily just had to have for the first dance. When she told me on the phone that I ought to sit this one out, that her fiancé was private, something old and stubborn uncoiled in my chest, I put on my best suit and drove anyway. I came up under men who measured twice and cut once because mistakes cost wood and pride. My father taught me that in a garage that smelled like cedar and hot dust. I built cabinets and stairs for 40 years, then graduated to small houses with a crew that felt more like nephews than employees. I am not fancy. I still sharpen my own chisels and save coffee cans for screws. But I did good work and kept what I earned, and by the time my hands went stiff in the mornings, there was enough to stop climbing ladders and start saying yes to a granddaughter who loved big dreams. Helen, my wife, had the soft voice in the house and the hard spine that kept me from becoming a crank. She believed in second helpings and second chances. She could settle an argument with a hand on the back of your neck that let you know you were loved and out of line. She passed away 6 winters ago, and the house went quiet in a way drills and radios could not fill. I learned to cook 2 dishes decently and talk to the photographs. Sometimes I still reach for her side of the bed and feel the empty warmth, like a place you just stood in after walking away. My daughter, Mary Ann, got my stubborn and her mother's kindness. She married too young and divorced with a baby on her hip and no child support worth speaking of. I helped where I could. More than once I pulled a double on site and drove straight to daycare with sawdust still in my hair. Saturdays, I took Lily to the all-night diner that put whipped cream on pancakes and let kids draw on the paper tablecloths. I built her a dollhouse with a front door that opened and a tiny brass knob she could pinch. When she was 10, we built a garden together. I made the raised beds. She sang to the tomatoes. When she was 14, I put a barri along the garage wall because she wanted to practice turns. I learned the names, plie, arabesque, and clapped on the wrong beats. Lily grew up on our laps and our shoulders, and, eventually, on her own feet. She is the sort who says please to waiters and thank you to bus drivers. She jokes that I spoil her because I did not know how to spoil Mary Ann, and there is truth there. I worked too much when my daughter was small. You spend the second half of your life trying to repair the places you cracked during the first, and money is the tool you reach for because it is easy. The better tool is time, but no one sells that. So I wrote checks and showed up, and I listened when Lily talked about choreography and the kind of wedding she wanted someday, which was, in her words, glowy. About weddings, I had feelings. The last one I watched closely was Mary Ann's, and it taught me how hope can be a loud band that drowns out everything you ought to hear. I do not meddle out loud, but I pay attention. I pay for things because I want to take pressure off, not to put reins on. I make lists because paper does not lie. I tell people the straight truth and try not to keep score. It is also true that my family tree has a limb we do not let the little ones climb on. We had a bad run with a boy from my brother's side who taught us what a smile can hide. We learned the difference between being generous and being careless. We learned that money can be siphoned out of a life as quietly as gas from a tank in the dark. That is all I will say here, only that some lessons are expensive and make you protective, and sometimes that looks like nosiness to people who have not been burned. So when Lily's talk turned from glowy someday to actual venues and menus, I told her to pick the hall with the tall windows. I said yes to the quartet because she wanted to see her grandmother's face in those floor-to-ceiling panes, like a reflection might wander in from the sky. I said yes to the fog machine because she laughed and said, "Grandpa, it is dramatic," and I am a sucker for all 3 syllables of that word out of her mouth. I wrote the deposit checks. I told her that a party is a kind of rehearsal for a marriage. You plan it together, you compromise, you sign your names to things. I did not need to meet her fiancé to know whether to fund her joy. That was my thinking at the start. But in the months that followed, something in the rhythm went off. The young man was busy whenever Marianne tried to arrange a dinner. His job, we were told, made him travel. His texts were brief, polite, and vague. When I suggested a simple backyard cookout to shake hands and look him in the eye, Lily smiled but said he was private, and that word sat strangely on my tongue. A good man can be quiet. A decent man will not be private with the people who are family to the woman he loves. Private was a lid. Private was a door with no knob. I tried to let time handle it. There is a kind of respect in not pushing. Every father and grandfather fights the war between protecting and trusting. I would start to raise a question and hear Helen in my ear. Let the girl have her excitement. Then I would catch a detail. The way Lily changed the subject when I asked what town his parents lived in. The way Marianne's eyes flicked to mine and away, mother to grandfather, like a baton pass we did not want Lily to see. I went down to the workshop and sanded the same board for an hour one afternoon, just to keep my hands from dialing. Money is supposed to be neutral. The person you give it to decides what it becomes. But when the first wire for the venue cleared, I imagined that money as a string tied to our door, inviting us in. When Lily told me one Tuesday evening that I ought to sit this one out, that her fiancé was private and did not like scrutiny, my ears rang. Sit out what? The engagement party? The meeting with the florist? Just for now, she said, sweet and firm, as if postponing dessert. We will bring him by when things calm down. That was when the old stubborn thing uncoiled. It is in my bones, the part that kept me on ladders when the wind came up, the part that filled the freezer during storms, the part that stood beside Marianne when her husband walked out and said, "We will make a plan." I do not shout. I do not threaten. I make coffee. I pack a folder. I put on my best suit that still smells faintly of cedar from the closet, and I drive. Before I locked the front door, I slipped Helen's church photo into my pocket, the way a man might tuck a compass away. I touched the frame, told her I was going to go see about our girl, and headed for the car. The drive took 23 minutes if you believed the map, and 40 if you counted the way my hands had to be steady on the wheel. The sky had that pale, shined look it gets after a rain, and the trees along the boulevard still shook with leftover drops. I parked 2 blocks away instead of using the valet because I wanted a breath before I walked into whatever I was walking into. I sat there a moment with the engine off, listening to the tick of cooling metal, the old car settling like a tired animal. I took Helen's photo out of my pocket and set it on the dash so her calm eyes could ride along. "We will look together," I said to the empty car, and the sound of my own voice made me feel less foolish. The venue was a stone church set back from the street, the kind with steps that have been worn into shallow smiles by 100 years of shoes. White ribbons on the railings, glass lanterns with candles, and a welcome sign in brush script that read, "Lily and Daniel." The name tightened something behind my heart. Daniel. I did not have a face for that name yet, and the blank space where a face ought to be felt like fog. Inside, an usher with a boutonniere and a nervous smile offered me a program. "Bride's family?" he asked. "All the way," I answered, and watched his eyes flick somewhere over my shoulder as if checking with an invisible supervisor. The vestibule smelled of lilies and lemon polish. A quartet was warming up, the violist out of tune by a hair. The whole place had the rehearsed shine of money, but the edges were wrong. No table with photographs of 2 families mixing in frames. No hand-lettered signs with inside jokes. No cousins corralling toddlers. I have been to enough weddings to know the difference between quiet elegance and quiet absence. A woman with a headset and a clipboard materialized at my elbow. "You must be Mr. Gray," she said brightly. She said it as if she had practiced it, the way you might practice a phone script. The name hit me like a tap on the sternum. "I am Walter Grant," I said, and her cheeks lifted half an inch before she smoothed them. "Of course. Wonderful to have you." She pivoted and vanished into the stream of tuxedos and dresses, but not before I noticed a page on her clipboard where someone had written vendor settlements. Daniel Gray. Confirmed. My checks were in those confirmations, but the name next to them was not mine. I stood a while in the side aisle, next to a niche with a statue and a basket of programs. People flowed in like a tide. I knew almost none of them. A couple of Lily's dance students in pale dresses waved at me. Marianne, my daughter, came down the steps from the bridal suite with 2 pins in her mouth and her hair only half up. She stopped when she saw me, blinked twice, then kissed my cheek and said, "Dad, play nice," the way you talk to a dog you trust not to bite, but who will not tolerate a wandering hand. Behind her eyes was a quick flare of relief that she could not hide and did not try to explain. More strangeness. The front pews on the groom's side were empty, little white reserve cards curling slightly at the corners, as if even paper was rethinking its choices. A stack of gift envelopes sat unattended near the guest book, and I felt the old carpenter's itch, bad placement, easy lift. I moved them beneath the table, my hands acting without requesting permission. On the program, there was no mention of the groom's parents, no reading by a favorite uncle, no college friend assigned to toast. It was as if the groom had been printed into the day by a machine that did not know people. "Grandpa?" Lily said from behind me, soft and surprised. I turned. She was luminous in the way a girl is when she is trying to be brave and beautiful at the same time. The dress fit like a miracle. Her eyes were bright and tired. "You came," she said, and the words carried an apology that made my throat tighten. I caught her hands and squeezed them once, light, so as not to mark the makeup on her fingers. "I wanted to see you," I said. "That is all." Her smile flickered like a candle in a draft. "He is getting ready," she said, and the word he felt like a wall. Then he stepped into view at the far end of the aisle, by the chancel rail, adjusting his cuffs as if there was a mirror there only he could see. He was tall, the suit well cut, the beard fuller than I remembered, hair slicked back so clean it looked like wet ink. He turned slightly, catching his reflection in the polished piano lid, lips parting into that same too wide, too friendly grin that once could open doors and pockets. My body knew him before my mind agreed. The space around my heart went small and bright, like a match cupped against the wind. Derek, my brother's boy. The child with the grass-stained knees who used to fall asleep on my couch with a dog-eared comic on his chest. The teenager who learned to sand end grain in my shop because he liked the way the wood changed under his hand. The grinning senior with borrowed shoes at graduation. The man of 22 whose eyes went flat when the words account and access came up in conversation. The nephew who disappeared after my brother's business account bled to zero over a long weekend, and Teresa, his mother, called me with a voice like someone strangling a song. We found the checks months later in a shoebox with a stack of glossy brochures for a venture that amounted to foam and air. In the time it takes to blink, other scenes stacked themselves behind his face. Thanksgiving, the year the ring vanished, Helen's ring, not too valuable, but ours, and how it turned up at a pawn shop an hour away 2 days later with Derek's signature on the slip. The county courtroom that smelled of coffee and dust where the judge called him a flight risk, and I felt guilt and anger like twin weights on my chest. The last conversation on my porch when he promised he was done with schemes, eyes wide and wet, and how I slid a 20 into his hand anyway because my brother was shaking and I did not know what else to do. I had prayed not to see him again and prayed that if I did, I would be wrong about him. Both prayers had been unwise. He saw me then. It was a small hitch in the fluid charm, a half-second stutter in the jawline where the smile lives. His gaze flicked to the planner, to the ushers, to the exits. He recovered fast. He always did. and began to cross the aisle with that easy swagger people mistake for confidence. "Sir," he said when he reached us, voice oiled and crisp, "we have not met. I am Daniel Gray." He held out a hand that waited just long enough to look polite. The new name slid across the old self like varnish over rot. Lily's fingers tightened on my sleeve. She was watching my face the way you watch a fuse burn toward powder. In the small quiet between breaths, I felt Helen's hand on the back of my neck the way she used to settle me. And I felt a different hand too. The calloused one that had guided Derek's when he was 12 and learning to plane aboard. I could taste the sawdust of that summer, and I could taste the copper of the phone call the morning my brother told me he was ruined. A man can be two things in one moment: the uncle who remembers the boy and the grandfather who must protect the girl. "Take the veil off," I said to Lily gently, buying myself a second, a ritual movement to anchor the room. It gave me time to look once more, to see past the suit and the grooming to the old hunger in his eyes, the quick math he worked whenever a person with a heart and a wallet stood within arm's reach. My pulse steadied. The old stubborn thing did not uncoil this time. It climbed. It braced. I let Daniel Gray's hand hang there in the air between us, and for the first time since I saw him, I let his real name cross my mind like a shadow that finally matches the figure it belongs to. I knew the full story. He vanished after gutting our accounts. Now he returned with a new name and my granddaughter on his arm. Why would Derek come back, unless the vows were a key to our family safe? Soon he will reveal his true intentions. But before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. "Daniel," I said, giving the name back to him as if it fit. "Walk with me." 2 minutes. Man to man, I kept my voice easy, grandfather warm. Lily's fingers loosened from my sleeve. The planner with the headset hovered, sensing a wrinkle she could not iron. Derek glanced at the doors, measured the room, then nodded and followed me into the side chapel where the light was dim and the stone kept voices close. I took out my phone and set it on the hymn shelf between us, screen dark. A habit from the shop: lay your tools where both can see them. My thumb had already flicked the voice memo on before I slipped it down. In my pocket, another motion. A text half-typed to Carrie at the sheriff's office. My friend since Helen's chemo days. Found him. Alias Daniel Gray. St. Joseph's on Linden. Ceremony in 20. I did not hit send. Not yet. Let him talk. Let him hand me the rope. "I have a welcome gift," I said, opening my folder and letting him see the edge of a cashier's check without letting him take it. His eyes tracked it the way a cat tracks a moth. "House money," I went on. "A practical start. But I prefer to place funds wisely. Lily tells me you have a venture. Perhaps you'd rather I invest through that for the tax efficiency." He checked his cuff, then smiled like a door on oiled hinges. Tactical, charming, a tone he had practiced in mirrors. "That is generous," he said. "Truly. And thoughtful. Most families, well, they are not as sophisticated." He stepped closer. "Graybridge Holdings. Conservative returns. We keep family assets insulated. After the ceremony I can show you the portal, set you up on my dashboard." He said dashboard with the relish of a magician saying secret compartment. "Graybridge," I repeated, tasting the name. "Escrowed where?" "Tri-Crown Bank," he said without pause. "But our rails move through an aggregator, faster settlement. We do a sweep at close of business for security." His eyes flicked to the phone, calculating whether it was recording. He lifted his gaze to mine and softened. "I know you want Lily safe." "She is my only granddaughter," I said. "That safe has a dial on it only I know. Tell me how your sweep protects her from randomness." I let the word hang. A man pretending to reach for concepts at the edge of his understanding. He liked that. Derek always enjoyed being the smartest in a room he planned to rob. He laid it out because he could not resist the theater. "Marriage gives you immediate efficiencies," he said. "Joint ownership simplifies paperwork. Healthcare, travel, lines of credit. People make the mistake of keeping everything separate. It is not romantic, and it is not efficient. He smiled. After the vows, we file the banking updates. 2 signatures. We're live. We can route vendor overages straight into Graybridge. No sitting duck accounts. No stray checks for sticky fingers. Then, before the honeymoon, a quick stop for heirloom jewelry, photography, insurance appraisals. People forget that part until it is too late. He reached out and tapped my folder. I am protecting what you started. He had said it all as if doing me a favor. In 6 sentences, he had confessed the arc. Transfer authority, sweep excess, convert sentiment into cash under the umbrella of appraisal, and be airborne before the rice settled. He kept his voice public-friendly. No obvious words like drain or liquidate. He was careful with nouns. He had learned. 2 signatures, I echoed. Yours and hers. For banking, he said smoothly. For the escrow? 1 to seed, 1 to confirm. We staged the first wire today. You would not even need to leave the building. I have the forms. He reached into his inside pocket and produced a slim leather folder. On top lay a crisp document with Graybridge letterhead. Beneath it, a thinner sheet, innocuous, with a title, Vendor Overpayment Reconciliation. At the very bottom, a small line in light print. Authorization to consolidate and redistribute residual funds to designated accounts. I had seen that line before, in different fonts, long ago in my brother's office when we thought we were signing for copier toner. You brought paperwork to your wedding, I said. I am prepared, he replied. Life rewards preparation. He tried to hand me a pen. I did not take it. Before I sign anything, I said, keeping my tone soft, I like to know the man. Your mother, what did you put on the program? I did not see. He blinked. Not a flinch, just a recalibration. She is private, he said. Complicated family. We are all complicated, I said. Your family name before Graybridge? He smiled again. Grant, he said quickly, almost convincingly. Coincidence, right? He chuckled, inviting me to chuckle with him. Strange coincidences today, I said. Too many to count. I let my face go thoughtful, then earnest. Help an old man keep up. After the vows, we go straight to the bank portal, then the safe at my house for heirlooms, then the airport. Is that the order? The last question I asked the way a foreman asks about the sequence of joists, not because he doubts the carpenter, but because the build has to stand. He took the bait, faster now, a touch of impatience at my slowness. Bank first while the witnesses are around, he said, lowering his voice. Easier to get sign-off when it looks ceremonial. Then the appraisals, quick in and out. We will have the car waiting with the luggage. I already told the planner to route the gifts to our suite, so no hassle for the ladies. He glanced at his watch. Clockwork, Walter. Lily deserves clockwork. In my pocket, my thumb finished the text to Carrie and sent it. Found him, alias Daniel Gray. St. Joseph's on Linden. Ceremony in 20. He plans immediate banking updates, sweep to Graybridge Holdings via Tri-Crown aggregator, stop at my house safe for appraisals. Warrant still active? Please advise. I did not look down. I kept my eyes on Derek's and let the silence say I was thinking about money when I was actually thinking about exits and handcuffs. 2 last details, I said. What account receives the sweep? I tapped the form where the light print ended. This part. I like to write numbers correctly. He turned the document, proud to show off what he had built. Designated account 1, he said, pointing. Designated account 2, the reserve. Both under our umbrella, and a stopgap wallet, cold storage in case of cyber nonsense. He smiled like a teacher praising a promising student. Belts and suspenders. I nodded slowly. You have thought it all through. Someone has to, he said. And there it was. An edge finally. Annoyance that I had not simply signed and thanked him for protecting me from my own generosity. Lily needs a partner who understands systems, not just sentiment. You are right, I said. Sentiment can make a man foolish. I slid the cashier's check back into the folder and shut it. Good thing we have time to do this right. Let us get Marianne, and the planner, and our pastor. I want everyone to hear how you keep families safe. I reached for the phone on the hymn shelf. On its dark screen, our two faces floated like a double exposure, mine lined, his smoothed by effort and oil. His smile did not move, but his eyes cooled by a degree. Tactics shifted. Walter, he said, voice lower, intimate. I understand your caution. But the ceremony starts in 15 minutes. Lily is under enough stress. If you introduce drama now, it will look like you are controlling. We do not want the ladies upset. You can trust me to handle details. I do not mind a little upset, I said. Sometimes upset is the only thing that tells you the table is wobbling. I stepped aside, letting the light from the nave fall across his papers. Bring the forms. Present them clearly. If it is all as sound as you say, no one will object. He weighed retreat against force, charm against pressure, tactical. He tried one more angle. You run a good shop, he said. You would not let a non-carpenter tell you how to brace a beam. Let me brace what I know. He reached as if to take my elbow and guide me back into the flow of the day. I did not move. Derek, I said softly and finally, giving him back his real name like returning a stolen tool. There will be no bracing without witnesses. And there will be no stop at my safe. I watched the name land. He did not flinch this time either. He went still in the way men do when they measure a wall and decide whether to push or climb. From the nave, the violist finally found the note. The chord settled. Somewhere behind us a door clicked, the sound a trained ear knows as uniforms arriving. I smiled as if a weight had lifted. Let us bring the family in, I said. I think they should hear your plan. The door clicked again, closer this time, and Carrie stepped into the side chapel with two uniforms behind her. Her hair was pinned up in the same no-nonsense twist she wore to chemo wards when she sat with Helen. Afternoon, gentlemen, she said, low and even. Daniel Gray, I presume. Derek gave her the smile he gave everyone, well-cut, generous, meant to be disarming, and took half a step back as the uniforms filled the doorway. Officer, I am in the middle of my wedding, he said, hand open, placating. If there is a problem, perhaps we can schedule. We just did, Carrie said. Right now. She kept one palm down, signaling the uniforms to hold. Her eyes slid to my folder, then to the thin stack in his hand. Mr. Gray, I'm going to ask you to place the documents on the shelf and keep your hands where I can see them. He obeyed, smoothly, like a man who had practiced cooperating just enough. What is this about? He asked. Fingerprint confirms to a Derek Grant, Carrie said, reading from the phone she had palmed. Multiple aliases, including Derek Wilder. Current alias, Daniel Gray. She glanced up. Warrants, open. Fraud, wire. We are going to take you in. The name landed like a hammer on stone. Lily had followed Carrie to the threshold and now pressed a hand to her mouth. Derek? She whispered, as if saying it might change the shape of his face. He turned toward her, and for the first time since I'd watched him step into the aisle, the grin fell away. He looked at me, then at Carrie. A furrow carved itself between his brows. That name, he said slowly, almost carefully, is in my wallet, yes. But I do not know it. He swallowed, eyes flicking left, right, as if the air might supply the missing pieces. 3 years ago I woke up in a clinic in Riverside with a head I thought would split in two and a nurse who called me by whatever was on the card in my pocket. Derek G. No insurance. No family listed. I took the name because that was the only thing I had. He touched a thin scar along his hairline I had not seen under the slicked hair. The rest is fog. Convenient, Carrie said, and the word cut. She shifted her stance. Turn around, hands behind your back. Please, he said, voice tightening. Not in front of Lily. I did not come here to hurt anyone. I have a business. Graybridge is legit. Vendor reconciliations, legal, belts and suspenders. I was not going to this man's house. I do not even know where he lives. His eyes cut to me, then back to Carrie. Appraisals were at Fenwick's downtown. If he said safe, I nodded because I thought he meant paperwork, rings, insurance. I thought, he breathed, once, hard. I do not know him. I do not know any of you. Lily took a single step toward him, then stopped as if a wire had tightened across the floor. Do you love me? She asked, voice raw. It was the question under every other question in the room. He looked like a man balancing on the thin edge between truth and what might save him. I do, he said, so quietly it barely reached us. Whatever I had before, I do not have it now. I started over with what was in that pocket and what I'm good at. He nodded at the papers. Systems. Money. I am careful. I did not come looking for a family to raid. I felt the room tilt just for a breath. The scar. The empty pews on his side. The way he parroted terms but skirted names and roots. The old fury in me hit the brake it always hit when Helen would lay her hand on my neck and say, wait. And then the counterweight dropped. The forms, the sweeps, the hatch he had built into our accounts and into Lily's day. Memory or not, the shape of his plan was a siphon. Carrie's face did not change. She had heard every kind of story twice. Derek Grant, she said, putting the name out like chalk on a board. You are under arrest for outstanding warrants. We will sort the rest at intake. Hands behind your back. She moved with the practiced patience of someone who would not be rushed and would not be stalled. He turned, finally, and the cuffs clicked, the sound a metronome for the quartet outside trying to find the same note at last. I can prove the clinic, he said over his shoulder. Riverside. A woman with a crosspin. I did not recognize the face in the mirror for weeks. I took work that came. Someone showed me Graybridge. I learned fast. I kept my head down. The name in my wallet was all I had. Funny, Carrie said, already guiding him toward the door, that the one thing you remember is the one thing that opens bank accounts. He twisted slightly, not fighting, aligning, as if searching my face for a plank he could step onto. If I had known you, he started. You stood in my brother's shop at 19 and asked for an advance, I said, the words surprising me by how calm they sounded. You sang to my granddaughter in a high chair. You pawned my wife's ring the November you needed cash. Whether you remember it or not, you are the sum of those acts to us. Today you brought paperwork to a wedding. I tapped the Graybridge forms on the shelf with one finger. Memory loss does not make this clean. Lily made a sound between a sob and a breath. Marianne moved to her, arms around shoulders, solid. I turned to Carrie. We need an immediate freeze on anything Lily touched this week. Joint accounts, pending wires, the venue's overpayment reconciliations, and a no-contact order. Today already in motion, Carrie said. Her eyes softened a fraction when she looked at Lily. We will get you a victim advocate and a list of steps. You did nothing wrong. She turned back to him. Walk. They moved. As they passed the threshold, he glanced once at the polished piano lid and saw himself there with the bracelets on, and for a flicker his face showed something like bewildered grief. I did not come to rob your safe, he said to the air, maybe to me, maybe to the mirror. I did not know you had one. I believed a slice of that. The rest I set aside like a board too twisted to use. Belief was no longer the currency. Protection was. He was still the man who could explain a siphon with a smile. He was still about to plug my granddaughter into a system that would empty her faster than tears. Whether he remembered our blood or not, he remembered how to pull. Out in the nave, the planner whispered to someone and the quartet fell silent for good. Guests shifted, curious heads turning like sunflowers. I stepped into the aisle. "The ceremony is postponed," I said, voice steady, old lungs finding the bottom of themselves. "Family matter." The words were simple and dry, but they cracked the spell. The day shuddered and reset. Carrie's shoulders squared as she walked him toward the light, and I sent a silent thank you to the woman with the crosspin in Riverside for keeping a stranger breathing, even if that breathing brought him back to my door. Every new detail made me more confused, and the confusion sharpened one hunger above all: the truth. The scar said one thing. My will for verity said another. The empty pews on his side argued for a man without roots. The sweeps and the light print authorization argued for a man with a siphon in his pocket. Maybe he was a stranger walking around in my nephew's name. Maybe he was the same boy with a better suit. I would not play doctor or judge today. I would be the gatekeeper. Compassion could wait on the porch. The keys stayed in my hand. So I made a list in my head, the way I always do when a structure wobbles. Freeze everything with Lily's name on it. Sit with Carrie and get the warrants, the booking, the victim advocate rolling. Call the venue, the florist, the caterer. Hold payouts, reverse overpayments, route nothing without my signature. Change the safe combination and move Helen's ring to a bank box. Ask Carrie to verify the Riverside clinic, the date, the attending nurse with the crosspin. If there is a record, fine. If there is not, that is also an answer. Have Graybridge pulled apart. Incorporation, beneficial owners, rails, aggregator, who actually touches the money when residuals get consolidated. Get Lily new passwords, new phone two-factor, new credit freezes. Ask Teresa, his mother, what she has heard in the last 3 years, if anything. Facts first, feelings later. And then I set the hinges for the 2 doors this could open. If he truly lost his memory and somehow built a life on the name in his wallet, I can stand 5 feet away and help him face what the name still owes: restitution, apologies, a doctor's note that explains but does not erase. He can prove himself in daylight, not in side chapels with clever forms. If he lied, and the forms are a lie even if his head is not, then I will press every charge, show every woman the path we took today, make sure the next family does not learn his name the expensive way. Either way, Lily will grieve, the man she thought she knew or the future she almost stepped into. I heard Helen in the back of my mind, palm warm on my neck. Be fair, be firm, be fast. I can do 2 out of 3 and aim for all. We ran the plan like a fire drill. Carrie walked us to a quiet room off the narthex and put a victim advocate on speaker. Marianne called the bank while I texted screenshots of the Graybridge forms. Within 20 minutes, Lily's cards were frozen, the joint account was flagged, and the venue agreed to hold every refund and overpayment until we gave written approval. The planner moved the gift envelopes to her locked office. I changed the safe combination in my head, and when we finally got home, on the dial. Then we started checking the story. Carrie called Riverside County, and within an hour had a confirmation. 3 years back, a John Doe with a head injury, white male, mid-30s, card in his pocket that said Derek G. The intake nurse wore a crosspin. It could have been anyone, except it was not. The nurse remembered the scar and the confusion. That truth knocked a piece out of my anger I had been leaning on. At the same time, Fenwick's downtown verified an appraisal slot for wedding heirlooms booked under Gray. The bank confirmed a pending vendor reconciliation sweep with a Graybridge account as the first stop. Those truths put the piece right back and added weight. He might not remember us. He still remembered how to siphon. Graybridge crumbled fast under simple questions. The holding company was a shelf corporation reactivated a year ago. 2 other brides had signed the same thin reconciliation sheet. One got her money back after a fight, one did not. Both said the pitch sounded practiced, professional, kind. Belts and suspenders, one of them told the advocate, his favorite phrase. Carrie looked at Lily. He did not invent this for you, she said gently. He had it ready. Lily nodded and kept looking at the scar she had not noticed under the hair. as if it might blink and tell her which part of the man was real. At the station, Derek, booked as Derek Grant with aliases Wilder and Gray, stayed calm. He asked for a lawyer. He did not call Teresa. He did not ask about us. A detective read us the bullet points we needed, nothing more. Outstanding warrants held, new charges logged, no contact in place. We signed statements and went home with a thick paper packet and thinner hearts. That night I moved Helen's ring to a bank box and sat a long time in the parking lot, watching the vault door close without making a sound. I told her what I knew. The clinic was real, the scheme was real, and there was no single word big enough to hold both. Lily did small brave things. She ate a little. She answered the advocate's texts. She let Marianne cut the dress out of its box and zip it back into plastic like a patient being tucked in. She handed me her phone and we went through messages together. Sweet, ordinary things from a man who had been careful never to write anything that could be read in a courtroom. The only ugly thing was a spreadsheet in his cloud with names for post-wedding admin. 3 tabs. Ours was 1. The other 2 were closed with notes. Done. Done. I called Teresa. She cried when she heard his legal name confirmed, then went quiet when I described the clinic. He always wanted to become somebody else, she said. I did not know he would get his wish. She asked what I would do. Protect the girls, I said. After that, let the facts line up. She asked to see Lily, and later came with lemon bars, mortified and kind, as always. She looked older. We both did. We kept it practical. Passwords, freezes, refunds. Carrie's team pulled Graybridge apart on their side while I did the family work on mine. When Lily asked me outright if I hated him, I told her the simplest truth I had. I hate what he built. I do not know who he is under it. If the clinic broke him, he needs doctors and consequences. If he is lying, he needs only consequences. Either way, you need space. Saying it out loud felt like setting the last screw in a hinge. 2 days later, the first relief arrived in our mailbox. The venue returned the deposit. The bank reversed the pending sweep. Fenwick's confirmed they never touched our heirlooms. The advocate sent the names of other women he had hurt, and Lily wrote one of them a note that said, "I believe you." I read it and understood that we were moving from crisis to repair, inch by inch. At the preliminary hearing, Derek stared at the floor while the charges were read. He did not look for us. He did not look for anyone. I watched him the way you watch a storm you have finally boarded up for, steady and sad. The judge kept him in. It was not dramatic, it was necessary, and it was quick. The next hearing came 3 weeks later, in a room that smelled like paper and coffee, not drama. Teresa sat 2 rows ahead of us with her hands folded around a rosary I had never seen her carry. Her husband, my brother, stared at the table where Derek would sit, as if willing it to turn into a workbench where problems could be fixed with clamps and glue. The prosecutor read charges, the public defender used words like conditions and supervision, and then the judge asked about bail. Teresa stood. Her voice shook as she offered the house as collateral. "He is my son," she said simply. "We will take him home. We will follow every rule you write." I did not stand. I did not object. I felt Lily's hand reach for mine and squeeze back to tell her I was still the fence post sunk deep, even if the wind leaned hard. Carrie met my eyes across the aisle. Her look said, "I have the net." The judge read out terms in a dry rhythm. Ankle monitor, weekly check-ins, no contact with victims, no financial work, no internet access beyond approved job searches, restitution plan to be drafted. He banged the gavel. It was not dramatic, it was necessary, and it was quick, again, but tilted another way. We watched Teresa sign. We watched Derek walk out with the hardware on his ankle and the thin dignity of a man who knows the hallway is crowded with eyes and history. I told myself I would not watch what came next. That is a lie decent people tell when they are tired. We all watched. In the small ways first. Did he keep appointments? Did he show up where he said he would? Did he stay away from Lily's dance studio? And then in the larger ones. Teresa sent updates when we asked and spared us when we did not. She let us know when he signed the first restitution paper. She did not tell us that she put his bed in the old sewing room because the smell of motor oil in the garage would remind him of the shop. I learned that by accident, seeing the light on in the wrong window one evening as I drove by. The truth came from a direction none of us expected. A woman called Teresa one Thursday afternoon, voice trembling with hope and caution. Her name was Renee. She had found Teresa through a tiny church bulletin post, a prayer request for a son named Derek who had lost his way and, maybe, his memory. Renee had been looking for him for years on the slow channels that carry lost people. Old emails, a dormant phone number, a nurse who remembered a scar. He loved me, she told Teresa. We were 19 when it started and not much older when the bad news hit. I got sick, it got expensive. He said he was going to fix it. Then he started bringing cash. Too much, too fast. We fought. He disappeared. Teresa brought her to our table because that is what families do when the old maps stop working. Renee arrived with a folder full of careful proof. Hospital invoices with cash payments in round numbers that matched withdrawals from the months when my brother's business account bled. Photographs of a skinny, stubborn Derek sleeping in a vinyl chair beside her chemo drip. Text threads where he promised to find one more bridge and one last patch. I read the dates and felt my jaw set. He had not been stealing to buy a car or a watch. He had been stealing to hold a life together with both hands, hating us enough not to ask and loving her enough to go to war with the wrong weapons. It did not cancel the hurt. It did not refund our accounts. But it put a spine in the fog. When Derek met Renee in Teresa's kitchen, he did not pretend to remember. He listened, eyes wet and the rest of him trying to stay still, while she laid the years out like planks. He touched the scar on his head like it belonged to someone else, and he was borrowing it. I am sorry, he said finally, and the words were not the slick apology of a man caught. They were the heavy kind you lay down because you plan to carry more after. We still kept our walls. No contact with Lily, no asking for mercy. Restitution first. He signed what was put in front of him and did not flinch at the numbers. The public defender worked a deal that kept him under supervision with a deferred sentence if he obeyed every line and paid back what could be paid. Carrie called it fair, and I believed her. I did not celebrate. I made a list. Payments, milestones, distances. Work was the next wall. He was not allowed near money, and that shut the door on everything he had taught himself to be in the years after the clinic. I did not offer him my shop. I offered him a broom at first, through a friend who runs a hardware store that smells like my father's garage. He swept. He unloaded pallets. He stacked lumber. He kept his head down, and his ankle monitor charged, and his mouth closed unless spoken to. It was slow, which is how honest things move when you have damaged the fast road. Lily healed in a different rhythm. She taught her classes, fed herself simple meals, stopped looking at the scar in old pictures. A man named Owen joined the community center as the new music program lead. Patient, funny in the quiet way, not private. He met us first because that is what a good man does when he cares about a girl who has a grandfather who signs checks and shows up uninvited. He asked me about the fog machine and laughed, not at us but with us. And when he and Lily started walking the long way home after classes, I felt a knot loosen that I had not known I was keeping tight. The hearing that was supposed to sentence Derek happened in spring. By then, the ledger had black and red in it both. Payments had landed on time. Victims had checks in their mailboxes and the surprise of an apology folded around them. Renee had stayed healthy enough to sit in the back row. The clinic had faxed its old intake notes. The detective had closed Graybridge with a flat report that used the word scheme, not art. The judge looked down at Derek and told him he was lucky to be standing. He agreed. The gavel did not fall the way it had the first 2 times. It paused and came down lighter. Probation, monitoring, work. restitution, counseling, no drama, all necessary. Time did what time does when people stop lying. We did birthdays small. Teresa and I learned to talk around the old fight without stepping back into it. Renee came for coffee and brought pound cake and a stack of paperwork from the hospital with the last bill stamped paid. Lily brought Owen to dinner on a Sunday, and he helped me carry a ladder without being asked. Derek went to meetings he did not want to go to and left without trying to explain himself. He kept showing up. That is as close to a miracle as most men ever get. The house became loud again. December came with a dinner instead of a wedding, the long table full and the fog machine hissing a little in the corner because Lily said we might as well get our money's worth. Owen toasted to families that keep the porch light on, and Marianne wiped her eyes like a woman who finally believes in quiet days. Teresa passed a plate to my brother without their fingers shaking. Renee hugged my daughter and did not let go first. Derek stood in the doorway early but not eager, ankle monitor gone, a tool belt on because he had come straight from a shift hanging drywall. He pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to me. Another payment, not the last, but close. Lily squeezed Owen's hand under the table. The fog curled around our feet like a low cloud, foolish and lovely. We ate. We told the truth in small pieces, and let the room knit itself back together one laugh at a time. When I walked out to the porch after dessert, the night was cold and clear. I touched the doorframe I had planned smooth years ago and thought of Helen's hand on the back of my neck. Be fair, be firm, be fast. We had managed 2 out of 3 and kept trying for all. The porch light stayed on. The big family held. Forgive and try rebuilding or cut ties for good. Where do you land? Share your opinion in the comments.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.